Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Sorry that we're beginning a few minutes late. We ran a little over on our pre-agenda meeting, but we welcome you to this Tuesday, September 10th, 2019 meeting of the school board. Before we begin, I would ask that you all join us in a moment of silence and then a pledge of allegiance to be led by Member Byrd. Well, let us begin. Dr. Jenkins, I don't believe we have any recognitions as we begin, and we don't have a strategic plan update. So we're going to begin this evening's meeting with several proclamations that we're very excited about. A proclamation proclaiming September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month here in Orange County Public Schools. And I'm going to invite Member Lopez to read the proclamation into the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Proclamation Hispanic Heritage Month. Whereas Hispanic Americans are the youngest and fastest growing segment of the United States of America, and whereas the Hispanic population is expected to contribute 44% of the nation's population growth from 2000 to 2020 and 62% from 2020 to 2050. And whereas Hispanic Americans are an increasingly vital part of our economy, and whereas Hispanic Americans share a rich cultural and linguistic heritage, and whereas Hispanic Americans have enriched our social, intellectual, and artistic life in the United States of America, and whereas Hispanic Americans have played an important role in the history of Florida from the early days of the pioneer to our current legacy of leaders in international trade, technology, education, and aerospace. And whereas celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15 to October 15 allows us to appreciate and validate the diversity and character of our students, parents, teachers, and staff in Orange County Public Schools. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Orange County Public Schools does hereby proclaim September 15 through October 15, 2019 as Hispanic Heritage Month and encourages teachers, administrative staff, support personnel, and students to participate in activities in promotion of Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Let me take this brief opportunity to mention something that we heard in our pre-agenda meeting. Dr. Jenkins, it was a concern by one of our board members that maybe all of our schools are not placing banners and remembrance for Hispanic Heritage Month. So I don't know the accuracy of that, but I would certainly hope to send a message from the board that we want to see all of our schools recognizing and celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. It's important to the board. It's important to the broader community. It's something that you brought up just a minute ago. Thank you. We also have a proclamation proclaiming September 17th, 2019 as Constitution Day and September 23rd through 27th as Celebration Week. And in the absence, Dr. Jenkins, I don't think we have anybody here to read that proclamation. In the absence of that, let me read the proclamation on behalf of Dr. Jenkins, myself, and the board. Whereas September 17th commemorates the signing of the United States Constitution in 1787, and whereas the history, significance, and effect of the provisions of the Constitution and its amendments are essential knowledge for Florida students, and whereas the content and concepts included in the Declaration of Independence serve as a foundation for civics instruction in Florida Schools. And whereas the knowledge of the sacrifices made for freedom, as well as the values on which this country was founded, is an integral part of education for our students. And whereas comprehension of all elements relating to civics and government is vital for Florida's youth in preparing them to become responsible citizens. And whereas teachers and staff in Florida's public schools, together with the district, school boards, and the State of Florida Board of Education, collaborate as partners in the civic education of our youth. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Orange County School Board and Orange County Public Schools does hereby proclaim September 17, 2019 in Orange County as Constitution Day and September 23rd through 27th, 2019 as Celebrate Freedom Week here in Orange County. And with that, we have one last proclamation, and this will be a new proclamation, I believe, for Orange County Public Schools, and one that we believe will have great impact on the lives of our children. And that is proclaiming September 23rd through 27th, through the 27th, as Start with Hello in Orange County Public Schools. And we're calling on Mary Bridges if she would come up and read that proclamation on behalf of the board.
Thank you, Chairman Jacobs. Proclamations start with Hello Week. Whereas it is appropriate to address the growing epidemic of social isolation and the negative impact these feelings of loneliness and isolation have on a student. And whereas, by building a culture of inclusion and connectedness, schools and communities can better support children and youth and reduce their risk of bullying, violence, and depression. And whereas Orange County Public Schools is committed to serving the social emotional needs of children and youth in our schools, be it resolved that Orange County Public Schools does hereby proclaim September 23rd through 27th, 2019 as Start with Hello Week and encourages a culture of inclusion and connectedness in our schools and community.
Thank you. And let me also remind any parents who might be watching, this is not just about what happens in our schools. It's not just about the message that our teachers and our counselors send to our children, but it's also the message that starts at home, reminding your children when they go to school to reach out to that child who maybe doesn't have a friend or is sitting by themselves, to remember that we all are social beings and we all benefit from being touched and cared about and included. So with that, we're very, very proud of this, and we look forward to a positive change throughout Orange County and throughout the nation. Thank you, Ms. Bridges. Next, we have introduction of newly appointed administrators. Dr. Jenkins, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, we have one tonight. That is Paul Browning, Assistant Principal at Lake Nona High School, will be the new principal at Corner Lake Middle School.
Thank you, school board members, Superintendent Jenkins, and staff for the opportunity to serve at Corner Lake Middle School. I would also like to thank Dr. Border and the high school office and Martha Chang of Lake Nona High School for their continued support and mentorship throughout the years. I would like to thank my family. I have my wife here, Robin, and my daughters, Emily and Hannah, and my parents, Barbara and Ed Browning, and thank you guys so much for all the support throughout the years. And finally, unscripted, because it was a surprise, I would like to thank very much, we have some Corner Lake contingency here. We have assistant principals and teachers and counselors, and thank you. It means so much. What a great way to start. So very, very excited to be a proud Corner Lake Eagle. Thank you.
Awesome. We're excited for you. And we're also equally excited for Corner Lake. Any other administrators, Dr. Jenkins? Okay. At this point, Dr. Jenkins, do we have any changes to the agenda, to the consent agenda?
We have one change, that is item 1502 being withdrawn at the request of legal counsel, settlement and release agreement.
All right, with that, let me, or do we have any members of the, well, we do have members of the public that wish to address the board on item 302. So, which is a public hearing. So we don't have any members of the public, I don't believe, that are here on the consent agenda. So let's move forward with the public hearing 3.01. Oh, yes, 3.01, request of approval of adoption of millage to support the 2019-2020 final budget. Dr. Jenkins. Oh, there you are. Mr. Kelly.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Oh, you get to go home. You get the rest of the night off. Yes, this is just the beginning of special perks that come your way. You don't have to stay with us any longer this evening. Awesome. Tell us where, and we might meet you later. Have a great time. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
All right,
Mr.
members
Kelly.
of the board, it is time for your final budget hearing. Your Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Dale Kelly.
Thank you, Superintendent. Here's our agenda for tonight. Similar to last time we had a tentative budget, we're looking at the proposed millage first, and then followed by the proposed budget. Then we'll have superintendent comments, followed by public comments, board discussion, and then we'll need the adoption of the millage first, and then followed by the adoption of the 2019-20 budget. All right, when we're talking about millage rates, it really all comes down to, it deals with property taxes. And property taxes impact both your commercial property as well as residential property in the county. So who is responsible for each component that determines your property taxes? Well, it starts with the property appraiser. He determines the just value. And from there, you deduct any Save Our Homes cap, which is determined by your legislature, and that's how you get to your assessed value. From there, you deduct any exemptions, which are also determined by the state legislature, to get to your taxable value. And then that is multiplied times your millage rate, which is determined primarily by the legislature and also by the local school board. And that's where you get to your property taxes. Now here's our property tax values over the past number of years. This is used to help fund the upcoming school year. Last year we had an 8.4% increase in taxable values. This year our taxable values are increasing by 8.7% based upon the certified tax roll by our local property appraiser. The current projection as well, as you can see, is fairly steady growth over the following years, about 5%, a little over 5% each year over the next 4 years. Unfortunately, the state legislature, again, for the 5th year in a row, did not allow that increase in taxable values that we see to fund the needs of education by keeping the revenues generated by your required local effort at the same level as last year. The reduction in required local effort costs the state budget over $272 million just for this year, or for our district, over $20 million. Now here's our millage rate comparison. 2018-19 to the proposed one for 2019-20. The first millage, the required local effort, is a specific amount that we must levy to receive state funding. This is equalized statewide so that if our assessments go up, our state revenues go down. We can't levy more, we can't levy less, we have to levy that amount. Second millage, there's your discretionary millage. It is the maximum allowed by law. Because we levy the full amount, we receive an additional $4.8 million in state dollars that get us up to the state average of $555.45 per student. The next millage there is your additional voted millage. This is the amount approved by the voters back in August 2018. Next is the capital projects millage, and this is the maximum also allowed by law to support our capital program. Overall, there's a rate reduction of 0.190 mils, or 2.6%, again because the legislature's decision on limiting the required local effort to last year's taxes, excluding new construction and additions. This is the history of Orange County school millage rates over the past number of years. Again, required local effort is set by the state. It is the red rate in the middle of each bar. You can see that the RLE has decreased by 1.564 mils over the last 10 years. And that 1.56 mils equates to approximately $234 million. All right, the rollback rate. We're required to advertise based on the rollback rate. It's required part of your trim legislation, and the rollback rate really eliminates the impact of increased valuation. It is only used in the advertisement of the budget and in the millage adoption language. So it starts with your current year taxable values. It deducts any new construction additions to get your current year adjustable values. Then the rollback rate is determined as a percentage of that to get to your prior year tax proceeds. For this year, the required local effort is 1.57% over the rollback rate, and the total millage is 3.79% over the rollback rate. So what is the homeowner impact? Well, with Save Our Homes, residential property can only increase the lesser of 3% or CPI, whichever's less. So CPI is only 1.9%, so that is the maximum increase for the applicable assessed values. So with an increase of 1.9% in assessed values and a decrease in the tax rate of 2.6%, the homeowner of a $206,000 home would pay $9 less in taxes. Now, what about commercial property? Well, commercial property is not limited by the Save Our Homes. So with the increase in property values are combined with a 2.6% reduction in the millage rate, the change in taxes paid for the owner of a piece of commercial property valued at $1 million is an increase of $260 for the year, or about $22 per month. Now let's look a little bit at the actual budget for the upcoming year, or the year we've really already started. The budgeting process really, as you can see, is really continuous. It goes year-round. It really starts in the fall as community input is gathered, legislative priorities are set, and then we get the governor's budget this past year in January. We got the EDR forecast, which looks at both revenues. They also look at student projections. And then we have the legislative session that began March through May. We had budget committees in the district as well that same time frame, March through May. We had initial schools allocations that went out to the schools in March. We had work sessions here in April and June. We advertised our budget and our millage rates back in July 28th. We had our first public hearing, the tentative budget, July 30th, and here we are tonight with the final hearing on the budget. So to summarize our budget, it has a focus on compensation to employees, given the limited resources. There's increased dollars for safety and mental health, as dictated somewhat partially by your legislative appropriations. There's maintain a focus on our district's strategic plan. And again, this budget preserves academic programs, retains highly qualified teachers, and protects arts, athletics, and student activities in the district. And again, that special millage was passed in order to help prevent layoff of teachers. That's one of the components of that. Now let's look at a summary of 5 funds. Again, we're comparing it to the prior year. The primary difference between the tentative budget and this budget is the inclusion of those carry forward projects within your capital projects budget. If you recall last, at the tentative budget, the capital projects budget was about $1.4 billion. Now it shows just under $2 billion, $1.9 billion there. Again, the special revenue budget only includes our food service program. The other federal programs, the grants, are approved throughout the year as they're brought before the board for approval. Now let's talk about specifically your general fund or your operating budget. That budget is a little over $2.2 billion. It is the operating budget of the school district, where we pay most of our normal operating day-to-day costs, most of the salaries, benefits, your transportation, your maintenance, all the things that it takes to run a school district. The primary source is revenue from the Florida Education Finance Program, otherwise known as FEFP. The funding is equalized per student statewide. That means that an increase in local sources within your own particular district or county does not necessarily cause an overall increase in your funding. Just because your revenues go up, so if your RLE goes up, produces more revenue, they'll take away state dollars, so it provides equal funding throughout the state. That was the goal. However, our budget also includes that special millage, and that is not equalized. All those dollars we generate stay within our district to benefit our students. Now let's look at the estimated revenue that helps support the budget. Here's our actual FTE for the past years, along with the projection for this year. Our current projection for this current year is 210,457 FTE. That's an increase of 3,764 FTE over where we ended last year, or the fourth calculation of 206,693. This forecast includes all your K-12 students, including charter students. However, it would not include any VPK students. Those are funded separate from a state grant. The VPK population is about 2,200. Our charter population is a little over 15,000 in the district, just to give you a little context there. As of the 10-day student count from our schools, Our overall population was actually 12 students less than we were last year as of that 10-day. So we're still hoping some of those students materialize, but remember, we're funded based on the students that show up. So if the funding doesn't happen, we will have to make adjustments in the budget and likely perhaps have to tap into our reserve should all those revenues not materialize. Also, based on a limited survey of some of the districts, there is a potential for a proration of funds due to populations that are increasing in other parts of the state. The district is also being impacted by the new Family Empowerment Scholarship, which to date has resulted in 1,096 students from Orange County taking that new choice option. Our overall funding increase from the FEFP in total dollars amounts to $71.6 million or 4.66%. However, $21.3 million is that best and brightest that's now folded into the FEFP, and then about $27.8 million will be used to pay for that growth and those students, those 3,764 planned new students. All right, this graph represents the total state appropriations. That's both operating and fixed capital outlay as a percentage of the total over the last four years. Gives you perspective how things have changed during the last 4 years. The first grouping, education, that includes early learning, public schools, community colleges, and universities. As you can see, the percentage of the budget slightly increased from the prior year. It went from 28.5% of the budget to 28.6%. You will also note that the general government portion of the budget went up again significantly, with much of that increase attributable to Hurricane Michael support. All right, this graph represents just that first part of that last graph we looked at, just the education appropriations as a percentage of the total over the last 4 years. As you can see in the second grouping, public schools increased just a little over last year. Here we have a comparison of our funding per student of the last 12 years. This graph is based upon the second calculation for all years for consistency. For the upcoming year, our regular per student funding is $322.98 above where we were in July 2007. Second calculation, and that's all shown in the orange bars on this graph. For the upcoming year, we have a 3.94% increase in regular FEFP funding over the prior year. However, about 1.69% of that increase is earmarked for best and brightest, safe schools, mental health, and the turnaround supplemental services categorical. That's also a new one in the FEFP. Including our special millage, and that's shown in the dark blue bars on the graph, our total per student increase is 4.27% over last year. Excluding those same categorical funds and including our special millage, OCPS has a per student increase of 2.72%. Even with the special millage, you can see we have a reduction in purchasing power of about $639 over the July 2007 amount. So it's showing, if you go all the way back to July 2007, before the Great Recession, that gray line at the top shows you where we should be, just keeping pace with inflation. And inflation has been relatively modest. It's been under 2% on average for all those years. Here's a graph of state revenues, state general revenue in support of education. The percentage of general revenue going to education decreased from 51.9% to 51.5% in this past legislative session. The percentage remains well below the pre-lottery amount of over 60% back in the mid-'80s. You can see at the beginning of that graph. This graph shows you the percentage of general revenue going to support specifically K-12 schools over the past 7 years. You can see that public schools did again increase slightly this year. However, with the required local effort being decreased each year, the overall funding for K-12 schools still has not recovered from the Great Recession. In the early years of the Florida lottery, 60 to 70% of lottery dollars coming to education were for public schools. That's represented by those green bars on the bottom of this chart. That number, like I said, was 60 to 70%. Now it's under 33%. So of that, just under 33% coming to public schools, 20% is for school recognition program, which could be considered educational enhancement, which was the purpose, the promise from the state legislature with regarding the use of lottery funds. However, 68% just supports the regular FEFP funding, and 12% is for the post-secondary program in the state. So those are not educational enhancement programs. Those are what we already had. And just for reference, the orange or rust-colored bar at the top, this is primarily the funding of Bright Future scholarships in the state from lottery. All right, here's our estimated revenues by source. As you can see, very little, there's really very little changes from last year. We have a very small amount actually comes from federal funds. It's pretty much split almost half and half between local and state sources. Now let's talk about general fund appropriations for a minute. The priorities of this budget, compensation is the #1 priority. Again, with our limited resources. The district will receive $468,000 in additional mental health assistant dollars to add more services for students. These will include social workers, guidance counselors, mental health counselors, psychologists, and other staff. The district also will receive an additional $1.6 million in Safe Schools allocation to help fund SROs at our schools. And remember, all these appropriations are based on the projection of students we will receive. That includes that additional 3,700, which at this point have not materialized. Additional support for teaching and learning. They're driven by the need identified in the teacher's survey. And then these last 3 bullets on this slide really come directly from the special millage ballot language. The special millage continues to be folded into your operating budget and treated as recurring revenue to support our current level of operations. Other budget items to note, board contributions for health insurance will increase by 10%. This equals about $17 million to the general fund. We continue to offer 3 plans, of which 1 remains free for employee-only coverage. The legislature increased FRS, or Florida retirement rates, for the upcoming year. The impact to the budget is about $2.4 million. And there were professional development dollars for common planning included in the budget. These were optional days prior to pre-planning for all instructional staff. Here's a look at our budget appropriations by function. As you can see, we got 4 years listed. You can see it remains fairly constant. Around 75.3% of all appropriations are in the instruction and instructional support functions. And based upon the latest administrative cost per student report from the Department of Education, OCPS has the 6th lowest administrative cost per student in the state, and our rate is the lowest among all our peer districts, those large urban districts in the state. Now let's talk about our capital projects fund for a few minutes. That budget, again, is $1.9 billion, just under $2 billion. And again, this now includes all your carry-forward projects. We have 3 primary sources: your sales tax, property tax, and impact fees that support that. It's really minimal state support for capital needs in school districts these days. The primary use of these funds are for new relief schools, comprehensive renovations, capital renewal, and safety in our schools. Depicted here is our 5-year forecast of capital revenues. Our primary capital revenues come from those 3: sales tax, property tax, and impact fees. The legislature did not provide any PICO funding for traditional schools for this year. Last year we received $2.4 million. This year all those dollars are going strictly to charter schools. The legislature did eliminate the need for the district to share our $1.5 million levy with charter schools this year. However, there's no guarantee that the legislature will continue to fully fund the charter capital as we move forward in the future. The sales taxes and impact fee projections are based upon historical collections And the property taxes are based upon the certified tax roll for 2020 and the forecast from the Office of Economic and Demographic Research for the subsequent years. Again, property taxes are increasing about 8.7% this year and over 5% for the following 4 years. The 10-year plan that's part of the budget includes revenue from the currently approved sales tax referendum that ends December 31st, 2025. This graph illustrates our capital projects uses for the upcoming year. This is based upon the revenues and balances that move forward in the budget. The largest portion of our budget is used for additional schools, 27.61%, that gold piece of the pie on the bottom left, followed by comprehensive needs, 22.18%, then district-wide capital, which includes those capital renewal projects, and the next largest would be your safety, security, and environmental at 7.84%, which includes numerous safety projects throughout our district. The capital plan continues with project priorities as we previously presented. It does include funding for ball field lighting in our high schools and includes the continuation of refurbishing all the tracks and field components at our high schools as well. It includes new capacity projects based upon recommendations from advanced planning. They use the enrollment data and student projections drive the decisions on where and when relief schools are needed. And it also includes continuation of those safety projects that we began last year. This is a look at our 5-year new school openings. We have 3 new relief schools that opened this past August: Castleview Elementary, Horizon West Middle School, and Water Spring Elementary School. In August of 2020, we have 3 additional elementary schools planned to open. For August of 2021, we have 2 new relief high schools that are planned to open, along with 2 more elementary schools. Then in August of 2022, we have 2 more elementary schools, a K-8 school, and a middle school. And then to close out the 5-year new openings, we have 2 more middle schools planned in that year to open up in August 2023. As far as comprehensive projects beginning construction, there's 2 that are beginning this year in this year's budget: Meadowwoods Middle School and Acceleration West. However, you remember we advanced several projects: Rolling Hills Elementary, Weingard Elementary, and Pinar Elementary, to begin construction in fiscal year 19. Again, this listing does not include carryover projects that are continuing to complete and close out. While we began the Orange Technical College campus planning in fiscal year 19, we continue with design of these 2 campuses in fiscal year 20, both the Orlando and the Winter Park College campuses. These are part of the final 4 projects from the original list of 136 sites. Other fiscal year 20 capital appropriations to note is digital curriculum continues to expand as we went live with our first grouping of elementary schools this past August, and we prepare for the next group of elementary schools. Remember, these dollars come from your half-cent sales tax program as promised to the voters. Those dollars can only be used for capital purposes as stated in the referendum and as required by Florida statute. Buses are on a 10-year replacement cycle. Portable moves and leasings are included as needed to help manage population fluctuations. The district continues to see an overall decline in the total number of portables in the district. Charter school funding is just a flow through of the PICO funds from the state, which again all went to charter schools for this year. And there are dollars again for district-wide painting efforts in the district. Now let's look at our debt service budget briefly. This budget's a little over $227 million. That's where we accumulate resources just to pay long-term debt. That's the principal and interest that's owed on our outstanding debt. There's 2 primary sources: the state CONDS revenues, which are only about $644,000 to the district. Those come from state license tag, fees that are part of the Constitution, and then there's transfers from your capital projects fund, which fund this debt service budget. Now let's look at the special revenue fund briefly. This budget is $170 million. The initial budget includes just your food service program, and that is a self-supporting operation of the district. The funding is primarily from federal reimbursement and USDA commodities, as well as local sales. Your federal reimbursements, commodities, that accounts for about 90% of the revenues that support this budget. You got about 9% that come from local sales and a minor part that comes from the state. Again, the meal prices will remain the same for 2019-20. And this budget also continues with the investment in upgrading kitchen equipment from food service profits. Now let's look at our internal service fund budget. That budget is just under $349 million. It's used to account for 3 different internal service funds, the largest being your Employee Benefit Trust Fund, where we handle our health insurance, your Property Casualty Loss Fund, and your Printing Services Fund. Right, the Employee Benefit Trust Fund, that budget is a little over $304 million. It is funded by board contributions for employees, as well as deductions for employees and their dependents. This is where we pay for medical claims and charges for services associated with the program. And the plan continues to comply with the Affordable Care Act. And we do have an increase of 10% in board contributions. So it's going from $8,444 per employee to $9,289 per employee. The other 2 internal service funds, the Property Casualty Fund, just over $37 million. That's where we pay for property claims, liability claims, as well as workers' comp claims. And this budget is strictly funded by charges to the other budgets. There's no additional revenue, it's just really charges to your other budgets in the district. Then we have our printing services budget, $7.3 million, and that again is funded by chargebacks to departments and schools. And with that, I'll turn it back to the superintendent for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Members of the board, Chairman, as required statutorily, we have presented to you tonight a balanced budget. I'd like to thank the board for your continued input and your time you've spent around studying the budget. Your input was largely responsible for a very extensive FAQ document that is available on our homepage for anyone in the public to be able to review. Information such as we are number 6 out of 67 districts for the lowest administrative costs, lower than any other large urban district. Lots of information around our healthcare program and costs. Information around capital versus operating budget, something that we take for granted that the general public and our own employees might be aware of. You were very influential, very helpful in compiling those FAQs regarding our budget, so I want to thank you for that as well. As mentioned before, in future months, in coming months, we will have workshops to help further break down the complexity of the budget, because it is quite complex. But we're going to have work sessions. The general public will certainly be welcome to attend as well, to look at more intensely each section of the budget, just for greater understanding and transparency. We're also going to be going through an exercise for return on investment. Better than, we've had advisors from our program at Harvard, better than just purely trying to do a zero-based is looking at return on investment for your dollars, so that you can purposely abandon those items that are not getting your return and keep those that are. And I have to tell you now, just so we're clear, I'm a little nervous because we just got our A back, but I think it's still a good exercise for us to go through return on investment to see if there are other ways that we might be able to save dollars in our budget. That is my commitment to the board, that we're going to go through a pretty extensive process with the help of some outside consultants. Lastly, mentioned this previously as well, and this was even prior to having the vote on our tentative agreement fail, we would have done this with or without a yes vote. But as promised, when we have executive session after the board meeting here, we will bring for your consideration, discussion, the ability to provide additional bonus dollars to our employees because of our fund balance, unreserved fund balance that we can use constructively to help reward our employees. That is the most I can say at this table, but in executive session, as I have noted over this dais previously, we will have that conversation and recommendation to you. Madam Chair, that is the end of our comments. It is back to you.
Thank you. Dr. Jenkins, let me mention with regard to the FAQs that I think almost all, perhaps all of those FAQs were actually generated by emails that board members received, most of which I think came from our teachers and our employees. So their comprehensiveness we appreciate because there's a lot of information, but I think it's helpful. But let me also point out that we have a couple of board members that want to be recognized. At this point, we have opened public hearing 301, and we've also had a presentation on 302. So I'm going to open both 301 and 302 because we have 6 speakers that wish to speak to the budget, which is item 302. We're required to take a separate vote on the millage and the budget, but because the budget is tied to the millage, it seems appropriate, in my opinion, for us to hear from the public before we take up either one of them. Although I would point out also that at this point, our hands are fairly tied in terms of the millage, but still, I think it would be more appropriate to take input from the public. So let me ask the 2 speakers that we have right now, Member Gallo and Vice Chair Gordon, if it's your preference to speak now or to hear from the public. Go ahead, Member Gallo.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that I understood correctly what Mr. Kelly was talking about when he said that we lost 1,096 students to the Family Empowerment Scholarship.
That's correct. Those numbers I got from our student enrollment area, and they track, students that are in McKay scholarships and this new scholarship that's available, the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So those are specific students that were in Orange County that are now choosing that scholarship option, then they're going to private school.
So the loss of those students, and I just have a follow-up in a second, will cost us approximately, if I did my math right, around $8 million.
That's probably correct, yes. When the state put that option out there, they didn't add any more revenue to support it. It was coming from the existing revenues that they appropriated for all districts throughout the state.
And then the 3,700 students that we projected that we have not received yet, that, if I did my math right again, and it's rough draft, would cost us around $28 million if those students don't show up.
That's roughly correct. But again, we don't have a count until October. That's when the initial count is to determine what actually are we going to be funded on for this coming year for the first half of the year. Then there's a subsequent count in February that really determines the remaining half of the year. So those are when the official counts are done to actually determine what your funding will be. So it's premature to say, yeah, we're not getting those dollars, but I just wanted to give you that additional information because those are just preliminary numbers. So it is some concern that the numbers are actually lower than last year at the 10-day count, as well as those numbers on that new scholarship.
Thank you. And Chair, if I could ask the superintendent, when possible, if we can get a breakdown of those 1,096, like where did they go, what district are they from, why did they leave? I think that might be important information for us to board to grapple. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Member Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, Madam Chair, had the questions I'd like to direct to the superintendent and Mr. Kelly. After I turn off this telephone.
Absolutely. So glad it was yours and not mine.
Oh, my God, I can't believe this. Thank you, I'm so sorry. I think that was my pastor.
Praying for
me
it.
not to curse or anything like that. Okay. All right, thank you so very much. I want to thank Dr. Jenkins and Mr. Kelly and his staff, and Dr. Jenkins' entire staff for putting together again for us, Madam Chair, this board a balanced budget. That is their duty to present to this board a balanced budget. It is very difficult to do. It is hard to do. But under Dr. Jenkins' leadership, we've been able to do that, and she's been able to bring forth a balanced budget in the operating and the capital and the debt service special revenues, as well as the internal services, which is great. I did hear Board Member Gallo talking about the loss of funds. And my statement every year is this: I know that generally those students are in those, special schools and receiving those funds, but we had worked out something in the past, Dr. Jenkins, that if they return, and that didn't happen before, we put it on this board table, and I generally bring that back, and the board pretty much agrees. When those students return, our financial department actually went back, whatever was left with that FTE funding, we were able to secure those funds back. Don't answer it right now, but we want to know where we are there, because they have a tendency, and now I know with the staff, the administrators, our support people, with this district being an A district again, as you say, you're nervous, everybody comes back. So they're going to be flocking back into Orange County Public School. This is something that we have to look at. It will overcrowd some of our schools, because most parents, they want their students in an A school district. Even if all the schools are not an A school, they pretty much want to say, my child attends an A school district, and that's how they look at it even on the national level. So Dr. Jenkins, I would like for us to trail those funds. I'm sure that this board would want to do that. And then if they do leave, there's a process where our financial department in the past have been able to secure those funds back for those teachers and administrators needing that fund to carry those students out for the rest of the year. So that has been a problem, Madam Chair, in the past. Okay, so you can address that. Then I heard you state about the fund balance, and I know you talked to each board member about the non-reoccurring appropriation, I'm sure. And we do have executive session tonight. Okay, and we'll do it. I'm just concerned, I want to know you mentioned additional bonuses, and I wanted to know, there are three entities, the OCPS bargaining team, the CTA bargaining team, and OSPA bargaining team. Now, I know OSPA settled, but they are still affected in this budget. So have you been able to sit down with the leadership to let them know that there may be, since you have balanced the budget now, this is our time to do it. Have you been able to sit with the three of you together to talk about the additional bonuses? I don't know if you could do that before you bring it before the board. So can you help me with that, please?
Madam Chair. Absolutely. Dr. Gordon, after the board gives us direction in executive session, then we will have those conversations. But I've said openly here at the board table that has been our practice. That was our commitment all along, whether the ballot passed or not, that would take place. But it would be inappropriate to give any specifics before the board has actually agreed to something.
Okay, so all right.
And it would be, I'm glad you mentioned that, it would be for all of our employees, not just for one group. And so we would, and Mr. Pollard understand if there's something additional.
Is he in the audience?
Here earlier.
Okay.
Anything additional to CTA would also be provided for OSPA. So thank you for bringing that up. And so I don't have to get back on the mic, I absolutely want to convey to the general public the reason we celebrate the district having that A grade is because of our phenomenal teachers and employees that support our students. And while we don't look largely to individual schools getting grades, because we think that's harmful to some of our schools where the population might have some struggles, when the district gets an A, that is attributed to every one of our schools and every classroom. The conglomerate receiving that A, we are certainly willing to celebrate and very proud of. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to clarify that.
Oh, that was a good answer. So I'm hoping we come out at peace tonight when we go up and meet, okay? All right, Madam Chair, I think that's it. for
Awesome.
right now. So
All
thank
right.
you,
Thank
Madam
you.
Superintendent.
Oh, Dale,
Madam
don't
Chair.
sit down yet. I have
Thank
just,
you, Dale. Didn't have to ask you anything.
okay, I just have
Let me
one.
see.
I have one. I think I got the last question, and then we're going to open it up to the public. But you discussed the RLE, and I was looking at what we have in our FAQs for the impact of the rollback, or I keep using the term rollback. That's not the correct term. The reduction in the RLE over the last 4 years, and the cumulative loss to the state of $4.3 billion, and the loss to OCPS just over that time of $344 million. And then in the FAQs, it says fiscal year 20 alone is $134 million loss of potential revenue that we could have had. So when you discussed the RLE just a minute ago, if you can go back, what do the numbers look like for this year for the RLE?
All right, and just because there is a difference in that, because the FAQs we're looking at the cumulative effect. What I shared were numbers were just on the 1 year, so
Right.
that's why it's different.
Yeah, I'm looking at the last part of the FAQ. It says for fiscal year 20 alone, that's about $134 million.
Correct. That's the cumulative effect. The number I was provided was just the 1 year. So one's looking at it for 4 years, one's looking at it for one. Even though it's only 1 year, it's cumulative. One is not. That's the
344 is cumulative. 344 million is cumulative. 134 million is single year.
Yes.
Okay. So what were the numbers right now for the millage? I thought I heard you say 20 million, and it was such a different number,
All
but I
right.
might have misunderstood. So what do you have for the impact?
I said the 1.564 mils equates to approximately 234 million for the district. That would be the 1 year.
234 million?
234 million, that's just 1 year, not that would be looking at what's the value of the 1.56 or the 1.564 mils.
Again, I know my ears aren't perfect. I do so much better when I can see than when I
Yeah.
can hear. I know that's a learning disability. Let me out myself on that one, but I heard 272 million and I heard 20 million.
All right, let me see if I can find where that number was.
Yeah, so and we have the presentation, but the presentation shows the amount that it is rolled back, but it doesn't show the dollar amount.
All right, there was and this was back on, I can go back to the slide if that helps. It was where we were
Yeah,
looking at
please.
the taxable values. In here, I said the required local effort costs the state budget over $272 million for this 1 year,
Okay.
or about $20 million for the district.
It's only 20 million this year?
For this year alone, the RLE reduction, just this year's reduction in RLE from last year, not
I'm
cumulative.
sorry. Now I understand what you mean by cumulative.
Versus 1 year, so
I'm sorry, what you're saying is, instead of looking at where we would have been if they just left us alone, you're saying just year over year.
yeah, just year over year. Yeah, that's why I say
Thank you.
cumulative versus just the 1 year, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
welcome.
That clears up everything. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Then at this point, we will open it up to public comments. Thank you all for wading through the board and making sure that we're clear on the presentation. Member Gordon, I think I just juxtaposed us. You're through, correct? Okay, great. So our first public speaker is Ashley Modesto. Welcome. Oh, okay, I haven't gone through the procedures. Go ahead, come on up for public comments. I think most of you have been here before. But let me just take a minute to do this. 3 minutes per speaker. Start with your name and address, please. There are certain parliamentary procedures that we abide by here. One, this isn't a question, answer, debate forum. This is an opportunity for you to give testimony to us, and that's very important to us. Staff, if you have questions that we can't answer, staff is available afterwards, or there's always an opportunity to revisit the questions. And No name calling, I think that's kind of it. Oh, and you all remember this, there's not that many of you, but during this portion of the public testimony and during the rest of the meeting, no outbursts, no screaming or yelling at us, and no booing and hissing, and no applause. But as an outlet, and so that we know what you're thinking, you can certainly raise your hand in favor or thumbs up in favor, and if you really don't like something somebody's saying or what we're doing, you can give us a thumbs down, and surprisingly enough, that actually does help us get a pretty good read on how people feel about what somebody's saying. So with that, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Ashley Modesto. I live at 489 Burnt Tree Lane, Apopka, Florida 32712. I am a math teacher over at Edgewater High School, and I came here today in particular because it is week 5 of school, and we currently have a math vacancy at our school in our class, which is Liberal Arts Math 1. And for those of you who are not familiar, Liberal Arts Math 1 is meant for students who need a little extra assistance prior to moving on to Algebra 1, which is a graduation requirement. I would say it's our group of students who are most at risk for not graduating high school solely because of test scores, which is very disappointing to have a sub on such an important class. I think the biggest reason why is just there is not a want to be a teacher anymore. There's not a want to be a teacher at OCPS as well. You know, if you've gone to the job fairs, you'll see the turnout is disappointing, quite frankly. I've been to a few job fairs, and it really is disappointing to see. The biggest factor is the pay. Because if you look at our career, I don't think there's many careers that are more rewarding than education. We work in a career where we get to see growth, and high school teachers were special because we get to go to graduation, and there's nothing better than seeing a student you had as a freshman graduate as a senior and make that growth and that changes and mature. It's hard to describe in words that feeling that you experience. So when we see that there is not a want or a need to be a teacher, it's really concerning. It truly is. And so I look at our budget and I understand that there is not a lot of wiggle room, but when I look at things like having digital devices, one-to-one, all the way down to the elementary school, all these programs that we use as teachers, and do not get me wrong, they are fantastic programs and they do make my life a lot easier, but in the end of the day, nothing will be able to replace a teacher. It's almost like buying car insurance and buying tires for a car we don't own. You know, all these instructional resources are great. Instructional coaches are amazing, and they really do help us out. But in the end of the day, what is that really going to do when there's a different sub in a classroom every single day for weeks on end? It doesn't have the same impact. We have to look at where we spend our money and what we do with our money, because we need teachers, especially in those classes, for our students who are most at risk. You know, we need to break that cycle of poverty that we have in Orange County. We need to make changes in our schools, and that can't be done if our students don't graduate from high school because they don't have a math score. You know, that's the hardest thing to see, a student not graduate. And I went to Apopka High School, and I have friends still to this day who have never graduated because they don't have those reading or math scores, and it's just heartbreaking because you can't go into a career, you can't go to college, you can't join the military without having that, and you're stuck, and that cycle continues. And so I really hope that when you guys go over the budget, to continue to look at that, continue to look at these resources and understand, yes, digital devices are fantastic, but they don't mean anything if we don't have a teacher for our students. And I want to thank you guys for the time. I'm running out of time right now. I just want to make a side note. Bonuses do not keep my lights on in my house. My salary does. So the bonuses, they may sound great. It's not going to keep power on. You know, Duke Energy will turn the power off. So thank you.
Ashley?
Yes. Sorry.
Everything you just said is, I shouldn't speak for everybody else, but I agree with everything you just said. It's so much more complicated than just saying, let's just not have digital devices. The pot of money it comes from is different. But the point you make is absolutely right. None of it works without teachers, none of it. And the fact that teachers are in the classroom because they get this intrinsic value out of seeing that they're changing lives, that's wonderful, but that's not enough. We need teachers to be paid a salary that allows them to live in this community and prosper and send their kids to college. We all believe that. That's why we're all here. We are really on your team. And And as a kid, I could spend time telling you what I went through when they decided to go with this other way of teaching where the teacher wasn't involved, and what a disaster it was for my life. Teachers are everything. The rest of that supplements. You're so right about everything you said. And I want to thank you for everything you said, but I want to assure you that we agree with you, and the next year we're going to go through the budget and we're going to look at everything that we can look at. And at the end of the day, we're still 43rd in the state for state funding, and the problem still is just not enough funding and not enough people in Tallahassee and around this nation or the state who understands the dire predicament we will be in a few short years if we don't have teachers in our classrooms. Those kids not graduating, not okay. We've come so far. We want to keep that momentum. We want to keep you. We want to keep people coming. And we've got to stay on the same team to get there, and despite the difficulties we have right now. So I thank you. I don't think anybody could have said it better than you could. I'd love to record that. We probably just did. With your permission, we may be, sending that out because your message is spot on. And we thank you for having the heart and the soul and the passion for doing what you do, but we don't for 1 minute think that's good enough. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker, Gretchen. Gretchen Robinson needs to leave early. So, Gretchen, we moved you up. Thank you for letting us know. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. My name is Gretchen Robinson. I live at 520 Ramona Lane in Orlando, 32805. I am a teacher at University High School. And I thank the board for letting me jump up in the line. I appreciate that very much. I wanted to say that a marvelous, creative, passionate, and dedicated teacher at my school burst into tears in front of me recently because that teacher was so dismayed at how little was left of her sparse paycheck after deductions. And she was frankly scared. This is someone who is a parent who lives rent-free with her own parents, but is still suffering from income insecurity because her remaining paycheck barely leaves her enough to pay her other bills, maintain her vehicle, and care for her child. And I would be very surprised if that teacher remains on the force for very much longer if this doesn't change. Speaking to what I've been hearing. I myself, in 9 years of teaching in OCPS, have never been able to afford housing without sharing it with another. Once I pay rent, make my car payment on my 7-year-old car, pay insurance, my student loan, phone bill, modest vet bills, help out my 28-year-old daughter, and pay various other essential expenses, there's barely enough to tide me over the summer. I can barely save enough to tide me over the summer. I'm always broke at the end of the summer. Now, this doesn't include health benefits. I'm a veteran, so I get VA benefits, and I don't have to pay for my daughter anymore. So if I did, I'd be in worse shape. My partner and I aren't sure if we can afford the modest house we live in that we'd like to buy. And just to wrap up, our paychecks are woefully inadequate to cover the cost of living in Florida, where living expenses continue to rise precipitously, in particular housing expenses. So I'm just one example. Other teachers have young children, as I said, or elderly or disabled family members they have to care for, and I can appreciate how they must struggle. The need for a budget which adequately compensates us, I see is crystal clear. And it is the stake of our children, of our future generations, that is on the line. Thank you very much.
Ms. Robinson, thank you for taking the time to be here. And the only thing I will add to what you say is that the rising housing costs is worse here in Central Florida than almost any place else in the state. So it's a very real concern. Let's hear next from Ms. Dormal.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm here on behalf of CTA, and I thank every teacher, every parent, and every community member who stands with us tonight to advocate for higher wages, better benefits, and improved working conditions for every educator. We live in a state where teacher salary rank 46 in the nation. We live in a district where the average teacher salary falls behind that of almost every large district in our state. A substantial raise is needed so we can be lifted from the bottom to the top. Considering the decades of underfunding public education, we know realistically we cannot expect to rise to the top in one contract negotiation, but we do expect it to happen. We expect our school board to make higher teacher salaries and every educator and every staff salary a top priority and goal. Our educators deserve no less and will accept no less. Like all Florida school districts, OCPS has a serious problem with the exodus of teachers from our district and our profession. And yet, in April, OCPS did not reappoint hundreds of annual contract teachers, many with effective and highly effective evaluation scores. Today, there are still vacancies in our school, and the district is having still another job fair later this month. Our children deserve to be in a classroom with a skilled teacher, not a permanent substitute. The teacher shortage in our district and state is a manufactured crisis, a crisis that shortchanges our educators and shortchanges our students. The teacher shortage in our district schools is caused by a shortage of decent pay, a shortage of autonomy, a shortage of teacher voice, a shortage of planning time, a shortage of respect. It will take bold commitment and shift of thinking to change things in our district and across our state. As we go back to the bargaining table next week, know this: CTA does not intend to disrespect the vote of our members who told us overwhelmingly that the district offer was not acceptable. Teachers spoke loud and clear. We heard them. They do not want bonuses. What they want is a teacher, decent base salary, an affordable health care plan, and better working conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stormo. Ms. Ramirez? Great to see you, Ms. Ramirez. I can say this.
Hi, Michelle Ramirez, 5961 Branch Drive, Orlando, Florida. I wrote it this time. I have smart boards at my school that my school says they can't afford to fix. And we have computers so old that don't support new programs that my school cannot afford to fix. It seems like we are slowly being replaced with technology. So slowly that the technology is out of date. Our pay is definitely out of date. I'm noticing a trend. Programs and technology are being purchased without the necessary upkeep and upgrades. Just like teachers are being hired and kept without the necessary upkeep and upgrades. Not all technology is necessary, but every teacher is necessary. So my students' artwork is outside in the lobby. I'm super proud of them. And I did an experiment, and it was the worst experiment of my life. I gave them a list of tasks to do using a computer program that I use in my class. And they couldn't do it. I gave them the exact tasks that this other program we purchased would teach them how to do. The program teaches them how to do. But my students couldn't do it without my help. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to help each kid, because simply putting words down doesn't help them. They don't know what it all means. They need somebody to help them break it down. That's where I come in, exhaustingly. So you ever use Microsoft Word and there's Clippy? You ever have Clippy? Yeah, you remember Clippy? Anybody old enough? So Clippy was around, and whenever I needed help using Microsoft Word, I would click on Clippy, and then I'd get annoyed. And then I would ask my English teacher to help me. And it was my English teacher that helped me. So Clippy retired. My English teacher could barely afford to. And looking back at all the help buttons that I pushed, it was my teachers who were the best program. They were the best technology for me to learn from. These tools that we use and that we purchase every single year, or that we purchase every so often, are nothing without the teachers that are utilizing them, and nothing without the teachers to show the students how to utilize them. And it's time for an upgrade. It's time for teachers to get the upgrade we deserve, because not only are we teaching, but we're also teaching technology, and nothing is being upgraded. So I still have 27 seconds left, and I would just like to say, I know you guys are working hard, and I appreciate what you guys do, but we need to do better. It's time for an upgrade. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Muse. To be followed by Gracie Fowler.
Steve Muse, 2260 Coolbrook Court, Oviedo, Florida, 32766. I'm tired. I spoke here quite a while ago, and I shared with you that my working very, very hard to try to make some meaning out of the CAFR and the calculations, and I need to find out on my own how this all works, because I'm an on my own kind of guy. And I've come to the realization that I'm not smart enough. Told that to my wife. She was shocked.
Oh.
I'm not a union member. I'm not an activist. I don't wear a red shirt. I've taught in OCPS for 30 years. I've taught for 35. I enjoy kids, and I'm exhausted. I hear the same stories being told up here at the podium. I watched it August 19th, and I watched our board members stand at this podium looking up at the tall chairs, the state members. They look just like one of us. And now I don't, the first thing I want to make the observation is, I don't see a great difference between a board member sitting down here at the podium looking up at a tall chair at a state legislator and me doing the same thing. And we get the same results. And I'm hearing, and I can go through all the emotion and all the other stuff and all the same stories. And I have some ideas. You're all going to get an email, and they're going to sound ridiculous about where I could find about $1,500 more per teacher from the CAFR, and you can look at it and fool around and see how it feels. But fundamentally, if they're going to, and I'm going to say there because I am by choice an outsider, if everyone's going to get what they need, which is the fundamental change in salary, it's going to take, at least at a local level, some serious paradigm shifts, some serious political will. Because if it was just up to you guys, I'm going to throw something out at you on the email. It's going to sound ridiculous, but it would take something amazing. But what I want to address is the call to head towards the state legislator. What I want to know is I'm here to help. I have the energy and the desire to help. I am exhausted. My voice is cracking because I'm completely exhausted. But what I want to know is, what are we going to do? Tell me why the RLE goes down. I know why. Who presses the button? And if it's meant to make the taxes lower to attract individuals, to make them feel happy the taxes is lower, no one's telling me that. You know, I am a fiscal conservative. I am a profound, proud fiscal and social conservative. I believe that every teacher, whether they're in charter school or private school or public school, is the same thing all of these people have said. I believe that everybody's doing what they feel is best. I hope we can keep going. And I believe that those people who believe in charter schools and private school vouchers and parent choice are doing it because I have faith that people believe that. And I believe that everybody who believes what they believe here is believing it for their purpose. The only way we're going to reach consensus is if you educate us, because you're telling us, the normal Joes and Joannes, that we have to solve it. We have to march on Tallahassee, or we have to be the ones that squeeze the ball, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Make it happen. Well, then tell me what the plan is. Say, Steve, we need you to go here and do this. Steve, this is how we're going to educate you on that. Because I understand the realities. I have learned just how complicatedly bizarre this is. And it's exhausting. You know, and we're all tired from the first 5 weeks of school. Exhausted. With all the paperwork and all the kids and everything else. And for everybody to be here, and look, our numbers are smaller here now. There aren't as many teachers. And because it's true, because they have other distractions, you know? And my point is, how can we re-energize both the community and the teachers? And I believe it is profoundly, ridiculously, I'm going to say this, it's education. You guys teach me what to do.
Thank you.
Okay?
Steve?
Yeah.
If I can call you Steve, thank you. That's exactly what we need to do. We've got to get through our negotiations. That's a separate issue. But we've got to give you the tools and the messages and the information that you need. And I wish you didn't have to do it. I'm sorry I'm taking so much time. I wish you didn't have to do it. It's not right. That's what you elected us to do. And if we could do it on our own, I mean, we're up there. But I can't tell you the disregard that most politicians in Tallahassee have for school board members, county commissioners, and city council members.
I just learned
And
that
teachers,
last week.
I know. So it's just, but they do care about voters. And they do care about votes. And so we need to team up and we need to come up with a plan. That's on us. And we need to give you messages. The hard part for us is that most of our delegation is with us. And the folks that we can most impact are already with us. But on a large state, having a minority group of legislators that are with us doesn't change things. We've got a new governor. We've got a new commissioner of education who wants to see teacher salaries go up. I think it's time to start talking about how. And voices like yours and the voices that we're hearing today, these are compelling stories. You don't know how compelling these stories are. They're very compelling. You're saying the right things. We're going to work on it, okay? And we're not going to give up. We can get tired and we can collapse of exhaustion and go to sleep, but we're going to get back up and we're not going to give up until we solve this, because if we don't solve this, our county, our country is going down the drain. Without public education, without teachers, we are destined to failure as a nation. It's that critical. Okay, we have one more speaker, Gracie Fowler. Gracie, welcome. Steve, thank you for coming.
Hi there. I'm Gracie Fowler, and my address is 2125 Stanley Street, 32803. I'm the mom of 2 Edgewater children. They went to Fern Creek, and they went also to Howard. And I have a couple of compelling stories for you about why I want to give testimony for having fully staffed schools with certified teachers instead of substitutes. So one thing that's going on with my daughter is she's in a class with 90 students right now. She loves chorus. She's a straight A student. She did chorus at Howard for all 3 years, and she'd like to be a well-rounded student, and she thinks that will help with getting scholarships. But she hates being in this class with 90 students because it's just loud and she's not learning anything, and it's frustrating. Another really compelling story, I think, the other day they had one of the active shooter drills, and they had a substitute in that class. There's already been a ton of substitutes this year. And in the active shooter drill, the kids by now know what to do, but the substitute teacher didn't. He asked for the students for somebody to turn the lights off, and my daughter was just like, oh my gosh, and she just did it. And but the substitute teacher did not lock the door, and he didn't tell there were a few boys who weren't taking it seriously. You're supposed to hide so that the shooter doesn't see you. So he didn't make the boys hide, and they come around and they shake the door to give you the good scare, and they just opened the door and were like, oh, well, you guys didn't lock your door, so you didn't really pass this test. And then I just thought of another situation too. And when my son was in 7th grade, his science teacher almost all year long was a substitute teacher. So I just wanted to give my testimony too about how, I hope we can see better pay for teachers so that we can retain highly qualified teachers, and we have fully staffed certified teachers, and we don't have to depend on the substitutes who, we just have too many substitutes. You can't learn like this.
Thank you. And I don't disagree with you on the substitute teacher issue, but Dr. Jenkins, if we can look into what training we are providing for our substitute teachers, because we do need our substitute teachers to know what is expected of them, not just in a drill, but in a true emergency. So that, not trying to distract from your overall message, but
That's part of the
your
overall
message was frightening
Yeah.
all the way around. So,
Thank you.
whew, thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Gordon. You-
I think Carrie, Dr.
Casterdental? Member Casterdental? Okay, Member Casterdental, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair. Thank
And
you.
that, by the way, that concludes our public comments from all of our public speakers. I'm so sorry, Member Casterdental. So we're poised and positioned to take up 301 or discussion by the board, whatever the pleasure is. It's back to you.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Dr. Gordon. I just want to make sure the teachers know we heard you. And like Mr. Muse said, these are the same kind of stories. And it's powerful that we keep hearing them. And I want to invite you to keep telling the story, to keep this at the top of our agenda. Since we do bargain year round, I want the board, I want the public, I want everyone to remember this, what teachers are going through year round. And I would like to also invite teachers to continue to contact the board members directly through email or however you want to, and give us your ideas. When Mr. Muse said that he had ideas for where he could find money, I'd love to hear that. When we're looking through the budget, we're looking through large categories of funding. But someone who's working in the schools and at the classroom level, they can sometimes find things that add up. So I want to just request those kind of recommendations where you might see redundancies or waste that we could put towards more back into our teacher salaries. I don't know what the district is going to offer. I do not know what the board is going to offer yet. We haven't had a discussion or agreement. We will after this meeting. But I can tell you that we are going to offer you the best we can. And even though we have heard you, we will continue to just operate in good faith. And I just want you to have that sense that we're on your side as we go forward. And I hope this works out, the second round of negotiations, and then we'll continue to go forward. And I know that my colleagues up here also feel the same way about making teacher salaries a priority. And I have some other areas to dig into, but I just want to thank you for continuing to make your case. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next then we have Member Gallo.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. As usual, Member Dr. Casterdental said it best. Thank you guys for coming out and sharing your stories. As heartbreaking and hard as they are for us to hear sometimes, they're absolutely necessary. And we feel you, and we will do everything that we can in our power to absolutely give us the best offer. And as Member Casterdental said, this is fluid. We can bargain year round, and we'll do whatever we can. And we've asked a lot of our teachers with your stories to share your stories, to let them be heard. And I just want you to know that we're fighting too. It's true what Chair Jacob said, that they don't always like to hear from us. But they do listen, and we have those conversations, and we are fighting as hard as we can on your behalf to get funding, whether it's here on the district level or whether it's in Tallahassee, wherever it is, because we recognize that you deserve so much more than you're currently being paid. So we are on the same side. Our end goal is the same, to get you guys more money, to get you a better pay raise. We all want that, the district, all of us. So with that being said, just thank you. I agree. Just keep sharing your stories. Thanks.
Member Colbert, and before Member Colbert speaks, did I inadvertently remove anybody from the speaker list? Okay. Member Colbert, you're next. Thank you.
So I just want to also thank you for coming and sharing your stories again. I want to let you know that we have been actively and diligently working on this at the source where the money comes from, which is the state legislature. Yesterday, we were able to meet for an hour and 15 minutes with the Commissioner of Education. And we told your stories, and he made it very clear that this is the year that they want to move on teacher salaries. So we've got to take this momentum that way. So you ask what you can do. We said to him, you tell us what our people need to do. You need to tell your stories to the Speaker of the House and his Chief of Staff, the Senate President and his Chief of Staff, the Governor and his Chief of Staff. You notice they're all him, he, his. The Commissioner of Education and the Chancellor. Those are the people that you need to write directly to them and to their Chiefs of Staff and reiterate everything that you have said to us. And the stories that we shared are, it's not that they're angry, it's that they can't pay their bills, and it's not okay. He did indicate to us that his goal was to take us up somewhere between the top 15 and the top 5% in teacher salary in the nation. And I would like to hold him to that, but we're all going to need it to do it together. Because we're actively doing it as much as we can. We care deeply and passionately about this. We're all going to need to do it together. So those are the people that you need to write. You can go on the website, myflorida.gov, and find their emails, and you be organized in this. When there 5,000 of you can put together a page and be talking about this, 5,000 of you have got to write those people to make teacher salary #1 priority this year. And we know from, Member Gallo was just in Tallahassee, that there are other interest groups that are actually worried about what their decrease in budget might be this year, because teacher salary is the end game up there in Tallahassee. So if there's any time for us to make it happen, it's this year, and know that we are with you.
Thank you, Member Colbert. I have an idea. I don't know how this will fly with the representatives that we have in Tallahassee, but we are the center of the state. We have a very, very large population here. We have we're the fastest growing in terms of total number of students. And we are geographically located where Brevard and Volusia and Lake and Osceola and even Hillsborough and Pinellas can quickly get here. That perhaps, and we've heard our Commissioner on Education make this commitment, and not commitment because he can't make a commitment, but express his desire to see teacher pay increase significantly. And that perhaps we invite the Commissioner and the Speaker of the House and the Senate President and someone from the Governor's office, and we host a forum here on the current state of public education. And then our teachers don't have to go to Tallahassee. We bring Tallahassee here to the center of the state, which is a lot easier to get to. And we work together with your union, and we work together with the PTSA, who cares about this almost as much as you do, and we work together with the Florida School Board Association, who shares this same goal, and we host a forum here, and we invite them all. And then you get to speak. And you tell your stories just like you told us you're telling them to us, respectfully and sincerely, not with anger, but with sincerity. So if the board agrees, I don't know if they'll take us up on it, but I know one thing, They're not going to come if we don't ask. If we don't invite them, it won't happen. If we invite them, and when we team up with our colleagues in the Central Florida region and the the coalition, and we team up with you, let's give it a shot. Okay? We agree? All right. We will draft a letter. We'll make sure the entire board is comfortable with the letter, and we'll send an invitation, and we'll pick a date and pick a location. Okay? Awesome. All right. Next, Member Gordon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I don't believe a word of it.
What I said?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No. I don't believe a word of it with the Commission of Education. I'm sorry. Number one, they don't even have a vote. So, number two, they don't even have a voice. And anything they told you all in your little meeting, it was malarkey. And the reason why I'm saying it's malarkey, because they're at the rule of the governor. I served with Betty Castor. I served with Senator Betty Castor on many commissions. When we had an elected commissioner of education, anything that is appointed in the state of Florida is not for teachers. Not only not for teachers, these are the people that run for office, get appointed, and then they never talk about us anymore ever again. So the devil with the Commission of Education, I'm not going to waste my time with the Commission of Education. I continue to waste my time and not waste it, but I continue to try to find people like myself that want to run for positions that will help teachers in the state of Florida. But I feel so bad Mr. Steve left, because we're all tired, and we know that we are good at what we do, because that's what we do. That's our chosen goal. We want to do that. I love what I do. I mean, mine is not a job. I'm sorry, because I've gotten to the place, well, it's a joy for me. I'm tired. All of us are tired, but it's a joy for me to walk in, because I know what it's like when I look in that child's eye, and I know that we're the last hope. Do you understand? You know, and I'm with the children that you guys don't teach. You send them to us, okay? So that's what we love. Keep sending them to us, because we're going to correct them and try to help them. Can't help them all, but we help the majority of them. I do not believe the Commission of Education. He is appointed. She is appointed. The only one we had was the African-American gentleman, and he died. And I wonder how his death, why so quickly he died. He was fighting for teachers. And I'm not trying, I'm just being honest with Florida government. The best commissioner we had was Betty Castor. And they didn't want Betty in that position. I'm being honest with you. She fought for teachers. They silenced her voice by taking that position away from teachers. And until you try to get that Constitution restated that the cabinet needs to be re-elected, we're not going anywhere. Let me tell you, and when he left out here and he talked about the required local effort, let me tell you about that little bit of tax bit that everybody might have shouted that you got back. Do you know I end up paying triple in taxes this year on a teacher's salary? I end up paying triple. I couldn't believe it. They say, go out and buy a car, go out and buy a home. You go out, you buy a car, you buy a home for a couple of years, you get a nice return, and then you put people in office that just they give you a little bit back so they can take a lot more. When we sat in that meeting as a board, everybody was there. We sat in that meeting as a board. And when we saw how much money they were giving us back in this stupid budget, we know darn well we didn't have much to deal with. Now I'm telling you where the money comes from. We could nickel and dime, and you could go back and ask us to cut. Mr. Blocker did it. We went back and asked every team to go back and see if you could cut 20,000 or 30,000 or 100,000 from your budget. Then who began to suffer? Our grades went down. It stayed down. We were no longer an A district. And then when Dr. Jenkins came back in, she said, I don't want to cut. If I cut the frills, even though teachers, you all come before us and you ask us to cut the frills. My God, that's all we have as teachers are the little bit of frills. Even our little broken computers had a little bit. I was so glad to get mine today. They didn't even operate, but we were able to get those resumes written. Because those kids going to need it. You just wait until the thing get through rolling around, and when it gets through rolling around, it'll come up. We could have written 50 resumes by hand waiting for you know what I'm talking about. One of the teachers got up and talked about it. But thank God, at least something. But if we begin to cut the little bit of frills that we have gained over the years, then it's still not going to give us the salary we want. That comes from the people you have put in office and that I have put in office. And the ones that I put in, it's not enough because they fight daily. So I'm telling you, you can come in here. Let me tell you what we ought to do. State Representative Dr. Karen Castor sat up there as a legislator for us. She can tell you how tough it is trying to get anything. It's just like Washington. Every state senator and every state legislator want a budget. They got their little budget and they go to the governor, and Bill Sublette, as our former chair, said it well. He was Appropriations. And they would go in there and say, I want this project. And lo and behold, they get $500,000. They get $1 million. I sat there this year and threw up, literally threw up. I had to go to the garbage can, but I saw all of South Florida coming in and getting $500,000. And then it was a couple of churches. There were churches, everybody had their project, and they were just grinning. And our little state representatives from Orange County was voting it in. Oh, yes, will you tell them how you're going to pump water? And what is the water well for? Oh, my God. I'm telling you what I see. So my time is up. I want to tell you, they stopped us. We are right to work state. We cannot go up there and picket anymore. They stopped us from picketing. Then they stop us where we can't even deduct our dues. This is ridiculous. What else are they going to legislate? When we go to the bathroom? Oh, they're already legislating that, because if you don't have an aid, you don't get to go. Now, I'm being honest with you. I know, because I have to go in for teachers that's around my hub. Gordon, can you hold my class for me while I go to the bathroom? And you all know I am telling the truth. Now, we can be real nasty and take a personal leave. I am so sorry that Ulysses Floyd left. We went to Tallahassee. We had 4 personal leave days. We fought like the dickens to get 6. Do you know they didn't want to give us 6? We ought to have 10 by now. We lobbied that in the 60s and the 70s to get at least 6. We only had 4. And I said, oh, heck no, I had children. I needed to be home with my kids. And we finally got 6. We've had 6 for the last almost 30, 40 years. We need to take one personal leave and all of us go up there and just sit like all those people do. When I go up there, they're sitting. That's where you need to go. They don't want to see us hanging around. I'm telling you, they don't want us hanging around. That's why those people who go up there and hang around their door, ask the state rep sitting here. They want you out of that building ASAP. Don't waste your time with the Commission of Education. We have superintendents that's doing a darn good job getting on the commission, and the commission is not going to do any more. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. The commission is not going to do any more than the governor appointed them to do. All right? I rest my case. I'm sorry.
Okay, Member Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also like to express my 100% support to the teachers. You deserve to be valued through the salary. Of course, you deserve a raise in your salary, a better choice. And I have to say thank you for not giving up. I see the same faces. But you know what? You are the example and the role models to others to be followed. So thank you so much for not giving up and keep going with telling your stories like my colleague Linda Cover says, and also Madam Chair over here that she said bring Tallahassee to OCPS. I think that is a great idea. I love the idea. I hope that can happen, because sometimes we want something to happen, and I know that the teachers are very disappointed to read the emails from legislators saying that we're not doing what we're supposed to do, and just trying to say something when we know that they're not doing what they're supposed to do. So the only way that we can make a difference is to fight together and to keep talking and advocating for a better teacher salary. I also have a concern with the substitute, because that was a topic that I heard today. And what type of supervision or evaluation does the substitute have if they don't have the adequate classroom management, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do in the classroom? Is that something that is in charge of Kelly Services? Is that something that we're supposed to do? I also have the question about the active shooter drills. Is that something that they're supposed to know, how it works? That is about safety. It was very concerning, the testimony of the mother. I'm talking about Edgewater High School. So I'm just have so many doubts now with initiatives or services to follow up on supervision and evaluation on substitutes. I know that we are facing that type of problem because we don't have enough teachers, but something needs to be done with the substitutes as well, because our children are paying the consequences.
So let's let Dr. Jenkins respond.
Dr. Jenkins? Yeah, I didn't want to take up her time on the clock, so you're done. Okay.
Yes, that's all right. Yes.
I didn't want to answer while your clock was still running. So a couple of things. Number one, our substitutes are supposed to receive training. They are under Kelly subs. We have authority to dismiss and tell Kelly we don't want a particular substitute back in our schools if their behavior is inappropriate, but they are supposed to be trained in our emergency procedure. So I've already asked staff to look into what may have happened there and certainly have a review for all subs. Bottom line is, if we're not happy with an individual substitute, they are Kelly Services employees, and we tell them do not send them back. Secondly, I'm going to have information on our actual vacancies. Our vacancy count was lower this year. I'm going to have that added to our FAQ document so folks can see what our actual numbers are around vacancies, and certainly get an update to the board as well. I've already asked staff for that. But and I want to add it to the FAQ because anybody who wants to help advocate for us, they have to be well informed. And so if you say things around computers replacing teachers and those dollars being used, then they're going to know you're not well informed. Those are capital dollars that come from our half-penny sales tax. So I want to encourage everyone who's going to advocate on our behalf, including the gentleman who said he was exhausted, look at the FAQs. They're going to help you pinpoint, make the right argument rather than a misinformed argument. And we'll make sure the substitute information is uploaded to our FAQs as well.
And what happens when we have a substitute for more than 1 month?
So number one, you need to remember a lot of Kelly substitutes are actually degreed individuals, and so it may be that you got a substitute who is actually certified. I can certainly look into a particular instance. What we've asked schools to do at the start of the school year is, if you have instructional coaches, they need to be in classrooms for a long-term extended vacancy, or we need to have support from central office in those instances. If that's not the case, we'll certainly look into it. And I've already gotten a message that Edgewater has already hired somebody for that position. It may just be a matter of getting the person in place, but we can get you an update on that.
Thank you.
Dr. Jenkins, I think that'll be really helpful. It's some questions that I had asked of Ms. Williams recently about our substitute teaching situation, and some of the details of who's actually in those classrooms and how longer-term vacancies are filled, or how they're supposed to be filled, I think is very helpful. And then it's going to be very helpful that that's consistently applied. But I think the most important thing I took away, Dr. Jenkins, from your comment, and I completely agree, is that if you want to advocate, having accurate information is the most important thing, especially when we're talking about the legislature, because they have one set of numbers that they look at. We have a more refined set of numbers, and we need to be clear on our message. Not to debate, because I don't disagree with really anything that Vice Chair Gordon just said. But I think that's why it's important for us, if we invite members of the legislature, it's important that we invite the members that are voting. And it's extremely important that we try to have the ear of the governor. And I believe he cares about people. I believe he's smart enough to know what it takes to get reelected. And I believe that this movement across the nation for teacher pay isn't lost on anybody that's running for office. So I believe we have a chance of changing things. Now, I can give up. It's easier to give up. I can give up and just say this is just the way it is, and we'll see what we can do with these dollars that we get, or we can try. And I believe that trying is the only chance that we have of changing things. So I'm determined to try. I don't know how it turns out, but I know how it turns out if we don't. So you're willing to try. We're willing to try. Let's not give up before we start. Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I have a comment, and then I have a question. I'm going to be in Tallahassee next week. Our committee weeks begin next week. So bills will be written, discussions will be had. I will be up there for the first committee week. I am trying to get into the governor's office. I always do. This is not something new. I always try to get in to talk to the education people in the governor's office during that first committee week, because that's where you form relationships. I'm asking each of you to send me an email. Send me your email. Tell me your story. I will print it out, and I will take it into the governor's office, and I will hand it to that education staffer in hopes that they deliver it to the governor. I also have kept every email that you have sent me over the last 4 or 5 months. I'm going to print those out and take those in with me as well. So please just email me, and we're here to help. We're here to do what we can, and I'm happy to deliver those letters.
Awesome.
And then a question.
Yes.
To Dr. Jenkins. On Kelly Services, do we provide input on how they train the teachers for those safety drills? Or okay, thank you. That's all.
Okay. That concludes comments from board members at this time. We have 2 items that are in play, and that is item 301, and that would be the approval of the millage. All right. Member Gordon, Member Colbert, you're recognized for a motion.
Thank you. By Florida statute, we must adopt the millage that supports our budget and inform the county property appraiser. I would like to move that we do so, and if at the board's pleasure, I will read the resolution for the record. Whereas Section 200.065 Florida statutes requires that the school board adopt a total millage to support the final budget and notify the property appraiser of its action, and whereas the 2019-2020 final budget is based upon a total millage of 7.109 mils, which is more than the rollback rate by 3.79%, as computed pursuant to Section 200.065 Florida statutes. Now, therefore, let it be resolved by the School Board of Orange County, Florida, that the board does hereby adopt the following total millage to support the final budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Required local effort, 3.861 mils. Basic discretionary, 0.748 mils. Additional voted, 1 mil. Capital improvement, 1.5 mils, for a total of 7.109 mils. Be it further resolved that the superintendent immediately inform the Orange County property appraiser of the action of the school board in the manner prescribed by law.
Motion by Member Colbert, seconded by Member Lopez. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Jenkins, any further comments on the budget before we take action on that? Please. Okay. Then the budget, the adoption of the 2019-2020 final budget, item 302, is on the table for action. Any members of the board wish to offer a motion? Motion by Vice Chair Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member, I'm tired, Gallo. But I'm not quitting. Member Gallo seconding. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Do we need to read the
I'm
figures
sorry,
into
we
the-
do need.
I
yes.
have those figures. I'll read those
Read them
into the
record. Thank you.
The adoption of the 2019-2020 final budget is as followed. The resolution is to approve the 2019-2020 budget for the general fund, $2,231,730,988. The budget for the special revenue fund, $170,188,462. The budget for the debt service fund, $227,833,851. The budget for the capital projects fund, $1,984,059,685. And the budget for the internal service fund, $348,801,859.
All right, then that item, all in favor of the item? I think we voted, but just to be sure, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that goes that's approved unanimously. Under the consent agenda, as Dr. Jenkins has already indicated, she's requested that we pull item 1502. Is there an withdrawal 1502? Is there a motion to amend the consent agenda as requested? That motion came from Member Colbert. Seconded by Member Byrd. All in favor of the motion to amend the agenda, consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? A motion carries unanimously. On the consent agenda itself, is there a motion to approve the amended consent agenda? Motion by Member Byrd, seconded by Vice Chair Gordon. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries with all members present voting in the affirmative. And now moving on to non-action items. Dr. Jenkins, anything for the board at this time?
I actually have 4 things, Madam Chair, members of the board. Let me start by thanking all of those who helped prepare us for the storm, Hurricane Dorian, especially to our Chief Operations Officer, Roberto Pacheco, who led our team, cabinet members in that preparation, members from ITS, Communications, Maintenance, Custodial, DP Police, that is District Police, Transportation, Food Nutrition Services, and 55 administrators who kept our shelters open. 513 folks altogether helping us to deal with that storm. My commendations and my thanks to everyone who played a part in that team, very efficiently run by COO Pacheco. I also want to mention that because it's certainly a curiosity for most folks, we do have 2 scheduled makeup days that were previously prioritized by the committee and approved a year ago. However, want to make everyone aware that we do have an MOU that has been passed over to CTA, as it will take their agreement to switch that October 17th and 18th day. Won't go into the details, but there are reasons why that date was prioritized, but we have an MOU that we passed over to the union for consideration. Feel very hopeful about that. Additionally, and I know folks are waiting to hear this, we will be bringing our preliminary assessment is that we do have enough instructional minutes to forgive one of those instructional days, which would salvage that Monday of Thanksgiving week if it is the board's pleasure to do so. And let me also, I saw everybody hitting their button. Let me also clarify. Folks wonder why we can't just forgive both days. So the Department of Education expects that you will have a set number of instructional minutes. Orange County is one of few districts who have early dismissal on Wednesdays. And so when you compare us to some other districts who do not have early dismissal on Wednesdays throughout the year, our minutes are different. We cannot match what others may be able to do for forgiving the additional day. But we do believe we have enough for the forgiveness of one. And so our hopes are, in the very near future, we'll be able to confirm with CTA on switching that Thursday and Friday for the makeup day, October 17th instead of 18th, should the union agree to it. And secondly, we will bring the official documentation for forgiving that second makeup day, which would be the November 25th beginning of Thanksgiving week, if that is the pleasure of the board. If you just look this way and nod your head, I think, Madam Chair, we can take that as consensus. All right, got it. Number 2, want to mention to you that according to statute 218-391, the board is required to have a representative work with the selection committee for your external auditor. That board member actually has to chair the selection committee for your external auditor. That process will be coming up probably in about the next 6 weeks or so, according to Ms. Lindsay, and then completed hopefully by mid-October to early November. That is where you select an external auditor who will do the audits for your internal accounts at all of our schools and other issues as required. And so we have to, this is new legislation, we have to have a representative board member to chair the selection committee for that external auditor. And so I wanted to make you aware that our board chair is willing to serve in that capacity, certainly has the background, attends our audit committee meetings as well, and I think would well represent you, but it is also at the pleasure of the board, Madam Chair.
And I will, if anybody else would like to do it, I want to be clear about this. I'm happy to have anyone else do it that wants to do it, but I think the board members have been briefed, while the state has recognized that the model that we have here is a good model, because this person needs to be appointed directly by the board, and that wasn't done in the past. We're going to go through this process. Ms. Linda Lindsay, who's in the audience, who's done a phenomenal job, will be applying. I am confident of that. All right, she's not nodding, but I'm confident she's applying. But nonetheless, we will.
That's a separate issue.
That's a separate issue, but we will go through this process of advertising and opening the process up. So do I have anybody else who would like the position? I see that Member Castro-Dental has pushed her button. Has Member Gordon. Okay. Okay.
That was an old button.
Okay.
I fully support your involvement in that.
Member Gordon?
Yes, I think that the board fully support your involvement in that as the chair of this great board. Also, I would like to add Dr. Jenkins, just in case whoever is vice chair, because we've done it in the past where the vice chair has backed you up, but it's definitely a position, and I just have to say this, I cannot believe they're legislating that. You know, this is operation. When are they going? They have nothing else to do in Tallahassee. This is local board control. This is local board stuff. Half the districts don't even have an audit team, let alone, Ms. Lindsay, just nod. Half of them don't even have an auditor. I mean, what else can they legislate up there? So you definitely would need to be there to hold the gavel, but I would say whoever sits in the vice chair should be able to back up, because not all the time in previous times did our chairman of the board was able to sit in, and we pretty much, Madam Superintendent, dedicated that position to the vice chair of the board.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. So there should always be a backup. And Mr. Rodriguez, I think the board needs to be cautious. I think the board needs to take a vote. Do you agree?
A consensus.
You tell me.
I think by consent,
Okay.
there's no real need
No
for a motion, but it's
opposition.
up to the board. As long as there's
All right.
consensus,
All right. By
that's the appointment.
consensus.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Kind of.
All right.
Go ahead. Back to you.
Two more items, and just so we're clear, that's probably why Ms. Lindsay was about to raise her hand. So what you've just done is agree that our chairman, Jacobs, will be your representative to chair the audit selection process. And then at a later date, we're going to deal with the org structure and the actual appointment of the quote-unquote internal auditor, which was also a provision in this latest legislative session. But very pleased to move that forward to you. We'll bring the other item back for you as well. All right, number 3, community meetings regarding our strategic plan draft and school start times. We'll start September 18th. We're very excited about this. It's our opportunity to roll out the draft of our new strategic plan, high-level vision, mission, goals, and values, and start to gather input from our community regarding those 4 models of school start times that we discussed in an earlier work session. And so survey will be released online in the coming days, and our first community meeting hearing covering those two topics in each board member's area is September 18th. And number 4, we want to thank Melissa and Alan for bringing home the gold in the karaoke clash. West Orange Chamber has a karaoke clash annually, and while board members had different things going on, we couldn't get the group performance together. Melissa graciously, with Alan, and Alan deserves special thanks, agreed to represent the school board, and they brought home the gold. Congratulations.
Okay, on that, we do owe her, but on that note, one of the rules is you're not allowed to record the performances, but I do have it from a pretty good source, in spite of what Member Byrd says, that it was recorded. And I'm thinking that our budget is tight, and this probably won't go very far, but perhaps we could auction off that copy of that. I'm thinking it would be, we can raise some dollars, turn it over to the foundation at least. There is a recording. I know somebody recorded it. I want to see it. We can, yeah. I heard it was a phenomenal job, so an encore performance. Oh, yeah.
The song was Time of My Life, and it was beautifully done.
Yeah, darn. Well, maybe it's a fundraiser idea for us next year. Okay. All right. Mr. Rodriguez, you have anything for us?
A couple things. First of all, I happen to know her husband from many, many years ago when he would donate his time to the Coastal Conservation Association, and my 5-year-old, 4-year-old, 6-year-old daughter at the time, depending on the year, would sing around and dance, while her husband was singing on the guitar. So I think he's not a ringer, but he certainly has been on a microphone before, so you had good company. Board members, just a couple of things. We've got an executive session this evening, obviously, on a matter involving the school board. There is also an opinion that came out in the last week or so up in Tallahassee. It's the First District Court of Appeals. This is a case regarding House Bill 7069. As you may recall, I think I've spoken with you individually in the past. The capital millage, which is what you're able to collect for building new construction and so forth, was impacted by House Bill 7069 3 sessions ago. And the requirement is that now you're required to share it in a formula created and devised by the legislature with charter schools. The board at that time opted to join with a number of other counties and has sought to get the courts to clarify whether the legislature has the authority to do so and impose it by will in legislation. And after that first year, which is still in the balance, the legislature the last 2 sessions, I'm glad to report, has reimbursed the district, but that will add up to millions of dollars. We know this is a long fight. We lost at the circuit court level based on a Supreme Court decision. We lost on not only the merits, but standing, which was a little surprising at the District Court of Appeals. But it is going to go to Tallahassee, to the Supreme Court level, because that's where we all expected, win or lose, we knew it was going to end up there regardless. The good news is, the prior board in selecting the appellate counsel, and really it was, again, it's a collaborative effort. It's Broward, Pinellas, it's a number of counties, other counties besides Orange County. The good news is that the firm we hired for the appeal, we negotiated so that they would charge us a flat rate regardless of whether there was one appeal or 2. So whether they pour in 1,000 hours or 50 hours, we've paid the same amount. And believe me, they are genuinely interested in prevailing for a number of reasons besides their passion for this issue, personal reputations and the like. So we've got a great team. They're out of Tampa. They did brief us on what the next steps are. And essentially the next steps are going to be, you will see a brief, a notice to appeal filed with the Supreme Court in the next 15 to 20 days. And then they will go and begin the process of briefing that issue. We don't know when it'll be resolved ultimately. It could be in 6 months. It could be in a year and a half. With the Supreme Court, you don't ever have a whole lot of certainty. But my hope is that at least it outlives one more legislative session, so at least we can receive adequate funding for one more year, and then beyond that, we'll see. If you have any questions on that or anything else, please let us know. And that's my report.
Thank you. And I think the only other thing we have on the agenda is an update from Member Gallo, Chair of our Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Legislative Committee did meet today to discuss adding one item to our priority list. That item is around CTE. We're just trying to give it some more teeth when we go to Tallahassee and ask for some funding and other requirements that we need for our CTE programs. And so that did pass through the Legislative Committee, and I believe will be brought to the board during the next board meeting. But real quick, on a side note, I just wanted to give a shout out to Central Florida Kickoff for Kids. This is a great organization. I attended their fundraising event last week. It was held in Oviedo, and they raise money to give food to needy children in the schools, and they operate in Seminole as well as Orange County, and they support giving food 4 times a year to 10 schools in Orange County: Castle Creek, Columbia, East River, Orange County Academy, Prairie Lake Elementary, Timber Creek High School, Timber Lakes Elementary, 3 Points Elementary, Waterford Elementary, and Wedgefield Elementary. It was a great event, and like I said, they raised $37,000. So these are 2 of my favorite things. They are UCF alum, go Knights, and they have a passion for helping our neediest children. So I just wanted to give them a shout out and thank them for inviting me and thank them for all that they do in our community and for our school children. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other items have come before the board before we adjourn? All right, Mr. Rodriguez, any kind of an, Member Lopez. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be hosting the Hispanic Heritage Month on October 2nd. All of you are invited. Our theme is going to be serving our nation with pride and honor. So it will be nice to see everybody with us celebrating the Hispanic Heritage Month.
Awesome, absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you for taking the lead on that.
Thank you, thank you.
Awesome, wonderful. Member Casterdental?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind folks that since the hurricane or the storms came through last week and we had to postpone the solar work session, that it will be rescheduled for a week from tonight. Can't? So it's not rescheduled for the 17th. All right, I'm glad I know that. So we will look forward to rescheduling the solar work session, but I'm eager to have those discussions. And when it is scheduled, I hope that members of the public also attend, and it's not just the internal discussion. So, all right, thank you for that clarification. And then I wanted to add one more detail to the makeup days. And that is, we're not out of storm season yet or hurricane season yet. So it's possible that we could still face another hurricane. And in that event, we would not have any other days for forgiveness. So, so I like the schedule that we have now, and thank you for allowing that to happen. But also know that it could come back again. And so I don't want people to be so surprised if there is another storm. All right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Member Gordon. To close us.
Yes, I thought Dr. Casadena would share how bad we beat them last night.
Oh.
But she didn't. No. And then Dr. Bridget Williams was looking at the scoreboard, and I don't think she had loyalty that we thought she had, so we have to revamp her later on down the line. And then I know y'all don't know. And then Dr. Jenkins didn't help any. This morning about 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, she was on the telephone saying that she heard that we lost the game. Well, we may have lost the game, but we gained some good friends on last evening. And one family that Dr. Bridget Williams introduced us to was the Loveland, Mr. and Mrs. Loveland. I had never seen, and Dr. Jenkins, your high school is rivalry love. Yes, we had that, but then I heard from one of the teachers in the audience that there was a little misdemeanor. That's what we're going to call it. And we were hoping it wasn't our students, and it was off campus. So we'll put it like that, Ashley. It was off campus. So I'm going to let Dr. Castadental do the honors of how beautiful it was last night. It was so crowded. There were no bleachers, and you did say that there are auxiliary benches that the schools can get when they have an affair like that. So I think that's good for them to know that. But they had to close the gate, and those that had tickets could not get in. And I think this is a wonderful kickoff. But Jones needed something, Edgewater needed something, and everybody was just so much love and camaraderie. I had never seen it, from the administration all the way down to the parent volunteers. I had never seen so many volunteers out there helping our students. So Dr. Castadental, will you just tell
Is there anything left to say, Dr. Gordon? It was a wonderful football game, I would tell you that. Edgewater was a great host to Jones High School, and they played a great game, and it was a good time. The weather was great, and football season is here. Monday Night Football was awesome, and it was fun seeing one of my former third grade students as one of the stars on the Edgewater football team, Christian Leary, number 6.
Now, I love that. See, she didn't say real bad what happened, but yeah. I'm not going to say it either, but we just knew. We were so cocky. We knew we were going to win that game.
Oh, ouch. Okay, Mr. Rodriguez, we don't need to make any announcements. We have a not a legal executive session briefing with the board is within, let's say, by 8 o'clock, folks. Okay? Or if we can get there sooner, that would be great. And there will be cake.
She did.
To the public that attended, thank you for being here with us tonight.